She thought no one was watching. But the man she helped was a millionaire CEO. The pristine corridors of Sinai Medical Center gleamed under the soft lighting that money could buy, where Nurse Samantha Baker moved with the quiet efficiency that came from 7 years of caring for patients whose medical bills often exceeded what most people earned in a lifetime. At 29, Sam had chosen oncology, nursing not because it was easy, but because she understood what it meant to fight battles that seemed impossible to win. It was nearly 3 in the morning when she found him sitting alone in the family consultation room, still wearing his expensive Navy business suit, despite having been at the hospital for what appeared to be days. The man looked to be in his early 30s, with dark hair and a carefully groomed beard that spoke of someone accustomed to boardrooms and power lunches. But his blue tie was loosened, his jacket wrinkled, and the exhaustion in his dark eyes suggested he was fighting a war he couldn't win with money or influence. "Sir," Sam approached quietly, her voice gentle in the way she'd learned helped families process devastating news. "The consultation rooms are usually locked after midnight. Are you waiting to speak with someone?" The man looked up at her with eyes that held a pain so profound it made Sam's heart ache with recognition. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse from what must have been hours of difficult conversations. "I know I shouldn't be here. I needed somewhere quiet to think." Sam noticed the financial documents scattered on the table before him, covered with numbers that even from a distance looked staggering. "Are you all right? Is there anything I can do to help?" "Help?" The man's laugh held no humor, only the bitter irony of someone confronting an impossible situation. "I'm Alexander Winters, CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals. We manufacture some of the most advanced cancer treatments in the world." He gestured at the papers. "And I just learned that I can't afford to save my wife's life." The statement hit Sam like a physical blow. Here was a man who controlled one of the most powerful pharmaceutical companies in the country, admitting he couldn't afford his own industry's treatments. "Your wife?" Sam asked gently, settling into the chair across from him, despite the dozen other patients who needed her attention. Alexander's face crumpled slightly. "Sarah. She's 31, and she has a rare form of ovarian cancer. Stage 4. His voice caught. "The only treatment that might save her is an experimental version of a drug my own company produces. But because it's still in trials and not FDA approved for her specific cancer type, insurance won't cover it." Sam felt something shift in her understanding. "How much does the treatment cost?" $2.8 million, Alexander said quietly, "for a 6-month protocol that might give her a 30% chance of remission." He looked down at the financial documents. "I have money, but not that kind of money. And even if I liquidated everything, bankrupted myself completely, there's no guarantee it would work." As they talked, Sam began to understand the crushing irony of Alexander's situation. He had spent years justifying pharmaceutical pricing by pointing to research costs, development expenses, and the need to fund future innovations. But now he was learning what families faced every day, the impossible choice between financial ruin and losing someone they loved. "The worst part," Alexander continued, his voice growing quieter, "is that Sarah keeps telling me it's okay. She says she understands why the treatment costs so much, that she knows I've worked hard to build treatments that help people. She's literally comforting me about not being able to afford the medicine my own company makes." Sam looked at this man, who was discovering that his industry's financial models felt very different when applied to his own family. "Alexander, have you spoken with your company about compassionate use protocols?" Alexander's expression grew even more pained. "That's the cruelest irony of all. As CEO, I've been the one setting the policies that make compassionate use nearly impossible to obtain. Too much liability, too much financial risk, too much potential for abuse. I created the very barriers that are now preventing me from saving my wife." "What do you mean?" "6 months ago, My board and I voted to restrict our compassionate use program to only the most clear, cut cases with minimal financial impact to shareholders, Alexander explained. We were protecting our profit margins. Now my wife needs exactly the kind of expensive, experimental treatment that our new policies were designed to prevent. As the night grew later and their conversation deeper, Sam noticed Alexander beginning to shiver in the air-conditioned room. Without thinking, she removed her cardigan and gently placed it around his shoulders. Sam, Alexander said softly, reading her name tag. You don't need to. Everyone deserves comfort when they're facing the unthinkable. Sam replied simply, adjusting the sweater around him with the same care she'd show any family member. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. Right now, you're just a husband who's scared of losing his wife. Alexander stared at this young nurse, who had just covered him with her own sweater, offering comfort to the very person whose policies had made healthcare less accessible for countless families. The gesture broke something open in his chest that had been hardened by years of treating medical care as a commodity rather than a human right. Samantha Nicole Baker, Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion as he read her full name tag. You've just shown me more compassion than I've shown this entire industry in 10 years of pharmaceutical leadership. Compassion isn't about what someone has done, Sam replied gently. It's about recognizing that we're all human. We all love people we can't bear to lose, and we all deserve grace when we're facing our darkest moments. They sat together in the quiet consultation room, an unlikely pair finding connection in a space designed for delivering life-changing news. Sam shared stories of other families she'd supported through impossible decisions, while Alexander talked about the husband he wanted to be and the leader he realized he needed to become. Eventually, Alexander's exhaustion caught up with him, and he drifted off to sleep in the consultation room chair. Sam's cardigan wrapped around his shoulders like a tangible reminder that someone understood his pain. Sam stayed nearby throughout the night, checking on other patients, but keeping an eye on this man, who had somehow become important to her, in the space of a single conversation. When morning came, Alexander found Sam finishing her shift at the nurse's station. Sam, Alexander said, approaching her desk with the cardigan folded carefully in his hands. I want to return this. And I want to tell you something. Sam looked up from her charting, seeing a man who looked somehow different, more grounded and purposeful than the broken executive she'd met 8 hours earlier. Last night, you showed me what healthcare is supposed to feel like, Alexander continued. And I realized that I can't save Sarah by becoming poor, but I might be able to save her by becoming the kind of leader who remembers that every patient is someone's Sarah. What happened next was what truly changed Sam's life forever. Alexander returned to Meridian Pharmaceuticals and announced sweeping changes to their pricing and accessibility policies, including an expanded compassionate use program and a sliding scale payment system based on actual financial need. He offered Sarah's treatment at cost, but more importantly, he offered Sam the position of Director of Patient Advocacy, recognizing that real pharmaceutical reform needed to be guided by people who understood healthcare from the bedside. Sarah wants to meet you, Alexander said when he explained the opportunity. She says, anyone who would cover a stranger with their sweater in the middle of the night is exactly the kind of person who should be making decisions about patient care. Sam accepted the position, but continued working part-time in oncology, ensuring she never lost touch with the patients whose stories would guide her advocacy work. 6 months later, when medical journals wrote about Meridian's revolutionary approach to pharmaceutical accessibility and their innovative patient advocacy programs, they focused on breakthrough policy initiatives and market-changing business models. But Sam always smiled when she read those articles, knowing that the real story was much simpler and much more human. Sometimes the most important medical breakthroughs happen Not in laboratories or clinical trials, but in hospital consultation rooms at 3 in the morning, when someone chooses to see a fellow human being and respond with simple kindness. And sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone is to cover them with your sweater and remind them that love is more valuable than any price tag medicine can carry. In a world that often mistakes profit for progress, Samantha Nicole Baker had reminded a powerful man that the true measure of pharmaceutical success wasn't in quarterly earnings, but in the families who could afford to stay together, because someone remembered that healing should never be a luxury only the wealthy could afford.